Hello YouTube, this is One Angry Cook, and in a previous video I said I was going to try and start making some videos about home cooking, and the angle on my home cooking is everything that I'm going to try and do in these videos is something that everyone should have in their home, or it's something that you can get at a big box store, or something relatively cheap that everyone can find. I'm not going to use any kind of crazy really high-end expensive cooking equipment. I'm going to try to keep it low. I may have to use something high-end at one point or another, but for right now I'm just going to try to keep it low. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is knives. And buying a set of knives can be expensive, and you probably don't need all the knives that are in a set of knives. For what I did buy a nice set of knives, but with the knife, I'm not even sure what these are for. I'm sure one of these is a paring knife here, and I have 8 of these steak knives. So, so basically, it's just a small blade. And for whatever these 3 knives, which would, if you bought them individually would be relatively expensive, I could probably get away with using a steak knife. So if you already have one, you probably don't need the other knives there. You are going to need some sort of bread knife, and all bread knives are serrated. And basically, you do a sawing motion to cut French bread or Italian bread or that kind of thing. I prefer a longer edge in something straight and even like this one. This one I got with my set. It's more expensive. It's actually a better built blade. But if I had to choose one to cut bread, this one is probably better, especially with longer cuts and wider pieces of bread. This is a knife that you see on many cooking shows on television, I'm sure, and probably on YouTube. But the whole deal with this is that these holes are supposed to prevent, or these little notches in the blade are supposed to prevent stuff from sticking to the blade. Like when you chop down on a cucumber or tomato, it doesn't stick to the blade, it should fall off. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I do like the angle of the blade and so forth, but if I had to choose one, I wouldn't choose this over a regular chef's blade like this. I think this is an 8-inch chef blade, so I think if you had to choose one or the other, if money is an issue, this is definitely one of the knives that I would recommend over this. This is probably a luxury item, something you don't need. I don't really use it that often, but there it is. You're probably going to need a long skinny knife like this if you are going to do anything with a roast meat or anything that kind of nature, or even with fish to make really long thin cuts. This it has less resistance because there's less steel there on the belly of the blade there. So you're probably going to need some sort of knife like one of these. I would choose the longer one, obviously. And this is actually when I used to work as a cook. I used to use this big giant blade here, and it's been hacked by someone I paid to sharpen the blade. Eventually, you're going to have to learn how to sharpen your own blades. If not, take it to someone that does. And take this off here. So I do have stones, and I have learned how to sharpen blades. All your knives, even though this knife right here, your knife should be sharp. You should be able to cut paper like that. And this is the one I got in the set. This is actually my go-to knife now. It's lighter than this one. This one's a monster. Even though this is not a full tang, you can see that the build is nowhere near the same quality as this one. Okay, but for the kitchen and the home use, this is fine, and your knife should be that sharp. Some people try to sharpen their knives with steel. This is a little sharpener from Gerber. It costs $5. And what you do basically, I cut my hand off here. You take the blade and you get it in here, in between here. I don't know if you can read that, but on this side it says coarse and this side says fine. So obviously if your blade is in really bad shape, you take the blade here and you run it across. It should make that sound. Do that a couple times and then go across the fine side. You might want to do that 6, 7, maybe 8 times on each side to get it sharpened. But that's kind of like the same deal as if you had a steel and you were just rubbing the knives across the steel. This is much more convenient and faster and probably safer. So if you could find, and really you don't necessarily need this one. I'm sure there's like a lot of different sharpeners out there with some sort of, it's got these, like a V-shaped sharpeners on it. They're either like ceramic or carbon or something like that. And probably this is a really cool way to sharpen knives and something I'd recommend. So if you had to actually just get 1 or 2 knives and you're just starting out on your kitchen, I would definitely get an 8-inch chef's knife. Probably one of these right here. And you just need a smaller blade of some kind. And obviously some sort of chef knife, or I'm sorry, bread knife. So basically, out of all the knives, if you have these four, you're probably going to be able to get away with doing 99% of the cooking that you need. Actually, you could probably do all 100% of it. You're not going to need to do anything. Everything every other kind of blade that you get is luxury, but these four are probably the essential. This is your main kicker right here. I mean, that's for damn sure. This is the knife that you need, that you could probably do the majority of the chopping that you're gonna do. If we were Asian, we would have some sort of cleaver here, and that would be the only knife that you have. Unless you were doing sushi, then you'd have like a really long, skinny knife like this one, made of a high carbon steel, by some guy in Japan that would probably cost you $300. So we're not at that level yet, and you could probably get away with doing sushi with a knife like that one or this one here. So if you're gonna stay with the knives, go with with something like that. And since I'm here, I didn't even notice this before, but I'm here. I think this board is called, let me get these out of here. I think this is an Epicurean. And I probably, yeah, don't know if you could read that. But this is an Epicurean cutting board. Really the main thing about the cutting board is wood. So wood cutting boards are much more expensive, but they're nicer to work on. So if you, it is worth it to buy an Epicurean cutting board because it's nice thin. It can be put away really easy. If you don't want this one, by all means, try to get a wood one, but get what you can afford. If you can only afford the wax ones or whatever those white plastic ones are, that's fine. I have several of those too. But if you only had to get one, I would go ahead and get this if space is an issue. The Epicurean cutting board is very nice. All right, so that's knife and, of course, cutting boards. So we'll go, that is probably like the basic knives that you need to have. If you have any questions, please, by all means, let me know.